Yo, what is going on, Titan Clan? It is your boy King Titan X here, back with another video, and there's currently like construction happening downstairs where I live. So if you guys hear any background noise, I apologize for that, but I will try and see if I can just fix it to the best of my abilities. And I would just like to give a special thanks to Neptune for helping me out with basically planning out the story so far. And yeah, let's get on with the video. I will leave the link to their channel in the description. Check out their live and DXD fused what if yeah.
In the whipping, I'm whipping the soul out it. Chin the tone when I'm flexing like Pilates. Why you frontin', you act like you somebody. Keep it trill in the ville, how I go by it. I was stuck in the rut, I was nobody. I've been looking for something to go by it. There's an art to the hustle like yo, got it. Kick back and hit like a new shotty. In the whipping, I'm whipping the soul out it. Chin the tone when I'm
Issei, though, was unlike the other kids within his school. He was popular, he was strong, he had a physique that looked like it belonged in Baki the Grappler. Many guys envied the boy. After all, this kid was practically untouchable. Issei was a boxing maniac, and despite his size, he was incredibly fast. Issei showed dominance over pretty much all of the school populace. He was too powerful to fight off. No one could really tell him what to do. At best, they could compromise with the boy. Those that knew Issei for a good amount of years, though, were confused by how Issei ended up developing in the end. Before their second year of middle school, Issei was pretty much just like any other kid. He was a bit of a peeping Tom, but they shrugged it off as him just going through a phase. After all, he was going through puberty, so it made sense he would have a keen interest in girls. No one expected for puberty to hit Issei like a truck, though. One day, Issei all of a sudden became taller, and it looked like he filled up his uniform far more than before. His facial features stayed pretty much the same though, and the same for his voice. That was how they were even able to tell that it was still Issei. His body was weird, his head didn't seem to belong to such a grown body. They couldn't really say much about it though, since Issei only ever told everyone that it was just puberty taking effect. Though they couldn't prove that Issei was lying, so they just decided to sweep it under the rug. Even though the teachers ended up testing Issei on multiple occasions, he was seemingly 100% natural. So all they could really say was that Issei seemed to have gone through a weird genetic mutation mid-puberty. They weren't completely wrong either, interestingly enough. Issei did go through a mutation of the sorts. It happened while he was still in his pirate phase. While digging in one of his neighbor's yards one day, looking for treasure, Issei ended up discovering this red crystal instead. Was it a ruby? When he picked it up and put it up to the light, he found that there was some ancient writing on it. Somehow he was able to read it though. He unconsciously began to chant the words that were being described on the crystal, and in a flash of light, Issei was no longer in his childish form. He was much stronger than before, and he felt faster. Issei looked at his hands and saw the significant change in size. Did he just switch bodies with someone? Was this his body? If so, why was he so big? Issei didn't have much time to really think about it though, because his neighbor walked out with a shotgun. Issei looked at the gun and wondered why the gun was pointed at him. Was he a threat to his own neighbor? He was like only 14.
Get off of my property or I'll be forced to shoot.
They yelled toward Issei. Issei, not knowing the full capacity of the form at the time, decided to keep his tail between his legs. He ran. He was more concerned for his safety than anything and finding a way to return himself back to the way he used to look. He doubted that his parents would believe him if he told them that he suddenly had more gains than his father in his prime at the age where he was pretty much just starting puberty. He didn't know how else he could explain the whole situation to them though. It wasn't too bad though. He was unusually muscular for a kid his age, sure, but it wasn't like he had a bodybuilder's muscle size just yet. He was also taller than the average 14-year-old too. Most were around like 5'3", while he felt like he was a good 7 or 8 inches taller than that. He had to adjust to the severe growth spurt he just had, and regain his balance a couple of times. He stumbled since he was so used to being around 5'1" until now. While running though, Issei noticed something. It didn't seem like he was getting exhausted or anything. He actually felt exhilarated, in all honesty. He didn't want to stop running. He felt unstoppable right now. He crashed through the woodlands area and he didn't slow down in the slightest. Issei had no idea what was going on, but he didn't mind this at all. He was having too much fun here. He pinched himself in order to see if he was dreaming. He wasn't. He stopped when he realized this though. He wondered if this was reversible. The best people to go to in order to find out about this sort of information were his parents, since they seemed to know everything. Issei went home and knocked on the door. His mother was the one to open the door, and she immediately fainted seeing Issei's new appearance. He was confused and decided to kneel down towards her level. He began poking her in order to wake her up, but it was nothing. When his father heard all the commotion, he came down to check on what was happening as well. He fainted as well. Issei sighed. He dragged them over to the living room and waited for them to wake up. A couple hours later, his father was the first one to wake up. He was about to faint again, but Issei stopped him from doing that. He grabbed him and shook him awake. He needed to know what was going on with his body, for crying out loud. Mr. Hyodo had no answers though. He couldn't really explain the strange predicament with his son. Issei's home with his mother also disappeared. When she explained, she had no idea why Issei was in a grown man's body now. They didn't know how to reverse it either. They cheered Issei up though. They would go through this, and at least Issei would be the tallest kid in his grade now. Issei smiled hearing this. They were right. He was incredibly strong and fast too. He was practically the exact opposite of how he was before. Issei moved on to joining a couple of sports clubs over the years, but the one he fell in love with was boxing. He was a natural at this sport. He liked beating down on others. After all, it sounded pretty mean, but it was the truth. He could punch out his frustrations on others, and they would also benefit from this. Faster reaction skills, after all. Yeah, that was Issei's justification. Moving on. Issei continued to grow taller than most of the students within his grade level. His boxing skills continued to develop until his school was forced to acknowledge him as one of their best, winning several competitions since most weren't even able to hurt him with their strongest attacks. By the time he reached by the time he reached high school, Issei stood at around 6'7", and he had the physique of a JoJo character. He was incredibly intimidating in appearance and could pretty much get whatever he wanted. Who was really going to argue with the Issei Tank Hyodo? He had a good amount of friends too, but most were jocks. People who played basketball, football, soccer. Basically, like, how should I say it? Pretty much for every American, it's soccer. Everyone that isn't an American, football. Understand? Okay, that's all. But baseball, etc. He was even friends with some other guys in the swimming team, but most were just friends with him for his status. It was practically a form of protection for them. No one was going to touch Issei, and if they were around Issei, that amount of fear would extend towards them as well, turning Issei into their makeshift shields. Issei didn't mind though, as long as he didn't get in his way. There was another thing Issei was interested in though, besides boxing, and that would, of course, be females. He was an attractive and tall male who played sports. He was very dominant too. It was practically the perfect formula to gain the attention of some of the girls in his classes. He dated a decent amount of girls throughout those years, but when he reached Kuo Academy, he pretty much skipped the whole dating aspect of things. He wanted to set up a name for himself, so he fought a great amount of the male populace within the school. They were all boxing matches, and of course this was Issei's element. He gave a really mean right hook too. 10 days was all it took for Issei to make a name for himself. People pretty much saw Issei as Cool Academy's new king. He was stronger than most of the guys and faster too. Those that were even able to get a hit out on him weren't strong enough to do any real damage most of the time. They tried ganging up on him though. That failed. They tried trapping him and taking his figurative throne, but that also failed. They ended up just getting beat down even more than before. It was honestly pretty pathetic in Issei's eyes. They had to resort to trickery in order to even have a slim chance at defeating Issei, but after the 12th time in a row, Issei could not take it anymore. He beat every last one of them into submission. Although some ended up in the hospital from Issei punching them too hard, most were left realizing that they had a better chance at winning the lottery than defeating Issei. Little did Issei know, though, that a Satan redhead observed how he fought. There was something off about Issei to Rias. Whenever he fought people, he emitted an unusually powerful and demonic aura. The aura was unlike anything she was familiar with, though. This aura came off as more primal than any of the other auras she was used to. She needed to find out more about this boy as soon as she could. If possible, she was also interested in having him join her peerage. She didn't care how many pawn pieces it took. He would be hers if it was possible. She practically called dibs on him at this point. One day, Issei ended up getting approached by a pretty girl with black hair. She introduced herself as Yuma, and she apparently was a new foreign exchange student. She asked him if he could direct her to some of her classes. Issei didn't see too much harm in that, and he complied. They were around each other for most of the day until Yuma ended up asking Issei if he could go on a date with her. Issei wasn't too surprised by the question though. It wasn't the first time a girl asked him out, but it hadn't happened in a while. Most just observed him from a distance since they were kind of afraid to approach him after he beat up even the faculty members. A lot of them posted it to WorldStar though. A good amount were surprised to hear that a new girl, of all people, ended up asking Issei out on a date. Most needed to build up the guts for over a month just to ask Issei if he wanted to try out their cooking. There was one thing on all of their minds, and that was who this Yuma girl was. Issei would be the first one to discover who Yuma was though. They went to an arcade for most of their date and ended up hitting up a Golden Arches burger joint afterwards when they got hungry. Yuma seemed to enjoy their date and began blushing when they were walking through the park. Issei noticed the look on her face and came to a few conclusions. The first was that she had a fever, which he was really hoping wasn't the case. The date would have been a waste in his opinion if that were true. If she was about to suggest they play Monopoly over at her place, he would be absolutely down for that. He was honestly hoping that was the case, but he had to acknowledge the third option too, and that was she was blushing because she had a delayed allergic reaction to some of the food they ate. If so, he would have the emergency call number on the speed dial. All of these options were incorrect though. She had something else in mind. She asked Issei one simple question, and that was if he would die for her. Issei immediately answered with a no though. Yuma giggled though. That giggle turned into full-on laughter, a sadistic form of laughter actually. Issei was uneasy. What was going on? Two large black wings sprouted from Yuma's back and she revealed an entirely new outfit from underneath. Issei saw this and knew that nothing good would happen here. She reintroduced herself as Rainier and how she was here to kill Issei. She admitted to enjoying the date, but she was more into the dominant sort of guys. Although he showed a tough exterior, it didn't seem like that was how he truly acted. At least in front of Yuma anyway. Rainier formed a spear of light and threw it at Issei. In one universe, it would have connected and she would have left the boy to bleed out. But this was a different timeline. There was no defenseless boy here. The spear didn't even hit Issei here. It was like an invisible wall protected Issei against Rainier's attacks. This surprised the fallen angel. What was the meaning of this? This wasn't in any of her reports. Issei was the one smiling like a madman now. He laughed intensely. He cracked his fingers and neck. He was about to summon his army, but paused. She wasn't worth it. She was too weak. It would be overkill if he brought out the army. His fist would be enough. He walked backward a couple of feet before charging right back at her. Rainier tried to throw another light spear, thinking that the last one was just a fluke for the boy. But the magical field destroyed her second light spear. She gasped when she saw Issei so close to her. He cocked one fist back before sending it at her. She was flung down to the ground. She was unconscious. Issei just yawned. What a waste of time. A red glow happened behind him. Not a moment later, though. He was able to see a fraction of the bright light. He turned around to get a full view of what was going on. He was surprised to see Ria's Grummery appear out of a magical circle for some reason. Was she here to congratulate him on his win? Although he wasn't that big of a dunce, it wouldn't. It would have been a funny scenario. What Issei really wanted to know, though, was what the magical circle was all about and how Rias was even able to find him. Rias looked at Issei's condition, though. She was surprised to find that he was perfectly fine. She looked around to see Rainier collapse on the ground. She was the one bleeding. Rias looked back at Issei and saw some blood dripping down his fist. No way. Impossible. No mere human could take down a fallen angel regardless of whether they were a high or low class fallen angel. How is this possible? Any regular human would have been bleeding out by now. I could have went and healed him too. Maybe turn him into my pawn. But that's not going to work here. What to do? Issei was listening in on Rias though. Rias wasn't aware of the fact she was thinking out loud though. Issei became confused. Was she also trying to kill him? But if that were the case, why mention something about healing him? Turning him into a pawn? What was this chick on about? Issei grabbed her head and forced her to face him. He wanted answers. Now. After a short explanation on how Issei apparently possessed a sacred gear, which is probably why he's so strong, and how the fallen angels were after him for it, rather than being afraid, Issei was pretty pumped. He wanted to fight all of them. Rias, when she heard this, immediately thought Issei was insane. Fight off a bunch of fallen angels? He was a madman. He was asking for an early death. He managed to get lucky with that one fallen angel, but she assured him that there were many fallen angels leagues stronger than Rainier. If he wanted to get any stronger in order to defend against the threats to come, she recommended he join her peerage. She explained how Kiba, Konako, Akano, and herself were all devils, and Issei would be a great addition to her team. He was a powerhouse on his own, but at his current level he wouldn't really get that far. She could train him in order to get stronger and make him more knowledgeable about the rest of the factions. Issei didn't seem to be interested though. Issei was about to leave, but Rias was becoming desperate now. She couldn't let him leave knowing all of this information and not at least be part of her peerage. It would reflect badly on her part. She ran over and grabbed his arm. She offered to make a deal with Issei. If he joined her peerage, she would give him anything he wanted, just this once. Issei thought about it for a second before agreeing. The next day, Rias felt a bit off while walking. It was kind of hard to keep her balance, but she was happy. She managed to accomplish two things in one night. Get Issei to join her peerage and give the biggest finger to Riser ever. Surely this would get her out of her engagement with that Phoenix bastard. Oh, how wrong she was. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got for right now, Titan Clan. It is your boy King Titan Next signing out. You guys already know the deal. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Peace.